Hi, my name is Natasha Ober, and I'm doing my presentation on Woody Allen's Midnight in Paris. The first time I was introduced to Woody Allen's work was the film Blue Jasmine, and I enjoyed the film and the music. My mom had told me that his films always had old music from the 30s and 40s. This interested me, but I never bothered to check out any of his films until I saw this film in my French class last year. It was like this film was made for me because it had my favorite time period, my favorite music, and the idea of time travel. It all starts with an engaged couple on a trip in Paris. Dropping his
main
job as
character,
a Hollywood
Gil
screenwriter, begins to voice
and
moving to Paris to finish his novel. His fiancée Inez quickly tells him that she can never live outside of the United States. She wants him to continue his screenwriting career rather than taking a chance at becoming a novelist and wants them to live in Malibu. They meet Inez's parents at a restaurant. It is obvious that Inez's parents don't like Gil and that they disagree on things from their political views to their thoughts about Paris. Gil seems to relate to the Parisian carefree spirit, while Inez and her parents think the city is corny and only comment on the traffic and their politics. Inez runs into some old college friends, Paul and Carol, at the restaurant and introduces them to Gil. They invite the engaged couple to Versailles to take a tour. Inez accepts, but Gil isn't thrilled about going and thinks Paul is a pseudo-intellectual. Paul gives a tour of the Versailles grounds. The conversation then turns toward Gil when Inez reveals that he would have liked to live in Paris in the 20s. She begins to tell her friends that Gil's novel is about a man who works at a nostalgia shop. Paul begins to go into this lengthy speech that people who believe that a different time would have been better than their own is called Golden Age thinking, and they think this way because they deny what is happening in the present. The group then take a tour of the gardens of the Rodin Museum, where Paul argues with the guide. Gil comes to the woman's rescue and sides with her and lies about having read the biography on Rodin, just to spite Paul. Inez invites them to wine tasting, and Carol tells them that Paul's an expert on French wine. While at the wine tasting, Gil gets a little drunk and tries to be affectionate with Inez, and she just brushes him off. Paul and Carol then propose they go dancing with them, but Gil declines and says he's going to walk back to the hotel. Inez warns that he's going to get lost, but she leaves him and goes with her friends. After wandering the city in a daze and asking for directions, Gil realizes he's lost and just rests on some steps just as the clock strikes midnight. An old-fashioned car pulls up to the curb, and the passengers beckon him to come with them. Gil hesitates at first, but then goes with them. They all go out and enter a party. Gil spots Cole Porter playing a piano, and everyone is dressed differently. He tries to figure out where he is when a woman named Zelda asks him who he is and what he does. When Gil replies that he is a writer, Zelda urges her husband Scott over. Gil realizes that they have the same names as the famous Fitzgeralds, and they tell him that they really are the Fitzgeralds. They invite Gil to come with them to another club. Gil comes along and is still confused and trying to figure out how he got there. He knows he's in the 20s, but he can't believe that he is in his favorite time with his favorite people. After a while, he just accepts it and enjoys it. The Fitzgeralds then leave Gil at a bar where he meets Ernest Hemingway. Hemingway offers to have Gertrude Stein read Gil's novel. Gil leaves to go get his novel, but finds that the bar is gone when he returns. The next night, Gil goes back to the same location where the car picked him up, but this time he brings his manuscript and Inez. After waiting for a while, Inez grows impatient and takes a taxi home. Gil wonders what he did wrong when the clock strikes midnight and the car drives up, with Hemingway waiting for him. Hemingway will arrive at Gertrude Stein's salon, where she is critiquing Pablo Picasso's artwork. Hemingway are taken with the artist's subject, his mistress Adriana. Gil and Adriana find that they both love the past. She wishes she could have lived during the Belle Epoque, when there were horse-drawn carriages and she could dine at Maxim's, a famous restaurant during that time period. Adriana tells him she hopes to hear about his book before she leaves with Picasso. The next day, Inez drags Gil to go shopping with her. At the marketplace, Gil hears a Cole Porter melody and traces it back to a young woman's nostalgia shop. Before Gil could buy one of the records, Inez tells him that they are going to meet Paul and Carol again at another museum. While Gil time travels again, Inez goes dancing with Paul. This time, Carol doesn't come because she is sick. Inez's parents begin to grow suspicious about where Gil goes every night. Her father hires a detective to follow him. Gil meets Adriana at the Fitzgeralds' big party. They decide to leave and walk around Paris and find more about each other as they speak. They are both attracted to each other, but when Gil reveals that he is engaged, Adriana becomes disappointed and excuses herself. Gil speaks with the surrealists Salvador Dali, Man Ray, and Luis Buñuel about his problem. He confesses that he is from another time and engaged to another woman, but he is attracted to Adriana. They don't offer much help, but Gil begins to question his decision about marrying Inez. Gil decides not to go with Inez and her family for the weekend, so he's able to leave every night and work on his novel. In the day, he wanders around, he buys a Cole Porter record from the nostalgia shop woman, and a small journal from a street vendor nearby. Gil goes to the Rodin Guide to have it translated. It is Adriana's journal. Gil finds out that Adriana is in love with him, and he gives her earrings and a dream. To make her dream come true, Gil goes out to buy some earrings after taking Inez's and causing trouble. He then finds out where Adriana is and gives her the gift. While they are sitting outside the cafe, a horse-drawn carriage pulls up and they get in. They find that they have been taken to Adriana's favorite era, the Belle Epoque. They go to Maxim's and then to the Moulin Rouge, Toulouse-Lautrec, Degas, and Gauguin. Adriana is offered a job to design ballet costumes and has to make a choice between staying in her favorite era or her present. Adriana doesn't want to leave this era. Gil tells her that it wouldn't be right and that he is from the 2010s. He explains that everybody dislikes the present, sometimes because life is unsatisfying, but it wouldn't be right to escape it and ignore it either. Gil notes that Gauguin and Degas wish for the Renaissance. Adriana wants the Belle Epoque, and he likes the 20s. Lots of people want to escape and live in their ideal world. But if that time period became their present, they would start to yearn for a different time. Despite Gil's logical argument, Adriana stays in the 1890s and Gil returns to the 20s. Gil goes back to Gertrude Stein's salon for his novel and some more feedback. She tells him that it is coming along well, but that Hemingway doesn't believe the main character doesn't realize that his fiancée is having an affair with the intellectual. With his eyes open, Gil goes back to the present and confronts Inez. He isn't angry about Inez and Paul's fling because he finally acknowledged that they were never compatible to begin with. He breaks up with her and tells her that he isn't going back to the US. He's going to stay in Paris and work on his novels. After leaving the hotel, he hears the clock strike midnight again, but this time he doesn't go back to the 20s. Instead, he stays in the present and is walking along the Alexandre III bridge, where he runs into the same nostalgia shop woman. They have similar interests and they both think Paris is the most beautiful in the rain. They decide to walk together as it begins to rain. The mise en scène. Everything conveys the correct time period from the 1920s to the Belle Epoque to the present day. The sets in the 1920s show what the bars, parties, and Gertrude Stein's salon must have looked like. The actors that play the lost generation wear wigs, makeup, and costumes that make them look like the artists and the writers they are portraying. Marion Cotillard, the actress that played Adriana, and the other flappers have finger-waved hair and wear the signature headbands and drop-waisted gowns. Most of the characters in the 20 scenes have cigarettes or drinks in their hands because they smoked and drank more than they did nowadays. The cars change when Gil travels back in time to Model Ts, and when he and Adriana travel to the late 1800s, there are horse-drawn carriages to show that there was another time change. The Belle Epoque extras are dressed in suits and dresses that match that time period. The sound. At first, the sound is non-diegetic and external, and as the film continues, more internal and diegetic sounds are used when Gil travels back in time. The opening scene, which shows the beauty of Paris, is accentuated by Sidney Bechet's jazzy tune. It emphasizes the ambiance of Paris in the rain, and from every angle, the city of lights is beautiful. In the film overall, the music is used to add to the scenes and visuals in an extremely complimentary way. The music is appropriate to the story because it sounds like a Parisian cafe by day and the sounds of the roaring 20s by night. Even during the Belle Epoque, the music matches the time period, like very classical violins and accordions. No matter what time period it is, the music is always working with the visual and never against it. It neither dominates the other because the music always adds to the atmosphere and never takes away from it. It makes the audience believe that they really are in Paris in the 20s in the rain. The themes. The three main themes have to do with life, denial, and happiness. Gil learns that everyone wishes that they had a different life at one point or another. He learns that life is a little unsatisfying, but it isn't realistic to believe that some place or time would be better. This is a universal truth because everyone at some point wonders if their life would have been better if they had stayed in a certain place or if they had lived during their favorite time. Adriana wants to leave the 1920s because she thinks that the present is dull. Sometimes our present lives seem dull because we are used to living the same way and we become bored and long for something different. Gil and Adriana are perfect examples of this idea and show both outcomes. Denial is another common theme in the film. Denial does not erase the truth. Gil seems to deny that he and Inez are incompatible, and he denies the problems that come with this fact. Gil tries to escape these thoughts in the back of his mind by escaping to his favorite time period. This is a universal truth because we find out something that we can't acknowledge and we pretend it isn't a problem and hope it goes away. Gil does this with his impending marriage to Inez. He does realize that the only thing they can agree on is Indian food and not even all Indian food, just the bread. But he doesn't take action. Gil isn't the only one who denies in the film. Inez denies that she might not be marrying her Mr. Right, and even cheats on Gil and feels she is justified. Adriana also denies the fact that she might grow tired of the Belle Epoque after living there and it becomes her present. She will continue to long for something more and never truly be happy. Happiness is another theme in the film. If a person continues to long for something out of reach, then that person will never be happy. This is shown in Gil and Adriana thinking they would be happier in a different time period, when in truth to be happy, a person must make their own happiness. Happiness shouldn't be in the next project or adventure, but their outlook on life must change. All of these themes are interlinked, causing and affecting the story in many ways. The director. The director of the film was Woody Allen. He also wrote the screenplay and won an Oscar for it. He is most known for his film Annie Hall from 1978. It won for Best Picture, Best Actress, Best Director, and Best Screenplay. Another of his well-known films was Manhattan from 1980. It was nominated for his screenplay. One of his more recent successful films was Blue Jasmine, which won for Best Actress, and his screenplay was nominated again. Midnight in Paris is one of his more successful films. It was nominated for Best Picture, but won for Best Screenplay. The review. With the use of stunning mise-en-scène, creative narrative, and captivating sounds, Woody Allen was able to transport his audience to Paris in the 20s, along with Gil Pender. Through the beauty and wonder of the City of Lights, it becomes Paris in the past and present. Woody Allen created the essence of Paris and conveys a meaningful story. This film makes the audience realize that denial is not a solution no matter how tempting it is to want to escape. It also gives hope that people can live a happy life in the present as they change their outlook and acknowledge the world around them, instead of living in a fantasy. And that concludes my presentation.